Hello, my name is Mike Reinders. I'm a director with Maple Reinders Group, and I'm also a board director with the Canadian Construction Association. The sudden onset of COVID-19 has hit the world like a ton of bricks, bringing industry after industry to a screeching halt. Born out of necessity, companies of all sizes, including construction, are intensely reinventing workflow, reinventing supply chain structures, and are adapting to new changes and realities. The current crisis is transforming the sector and is perhaps a pivotal turning point for the industry. The need to innovate is a new driving force, but as we all know, there is a cost for innovation. The pandemic and ensuing financial disruptions are forcing tighter budgets for many companies. In this scenario, what are the best opportunities to balance the innovation efforts and to finance it? So as moderator of your session, I would like to welcome three gentlemen, Kyle Hulme, Léger and Tim Fitch. Now, Kyle is the national leader for digital strategy at BDO. As the national digital lead, Kyle specializes in assisting clients, especially those in construction, to digitally evolve to become closer to their customers and improving efficiencies and to drive growth. Jean is with the Industrial Research Program at the National Research Council, that's the NRC in Ottawa. Jean is an industrial technology advisor for the Industrial Research Assistance Program. Another acronym is IRAP. So that is also with the National Research Council, the NRC. So for the past 21 years, he brings his construction experience to innovate, to help innovate small, medium enterprises while delivering the program's advisory and financial assistance to those firms. And last but not least, Tim Fitch is the owner of Invent Business Incorporated. Tim founded Invent and specializes in construction and related scientific research and experimental development, another acronym. That is SHRED, S-R-E-D, SHRED claims and SHRED credits. He's done that both in the UK, Ireland, and in Canada. So to all of you, to start things off, I'll raise the first question. There's a lot of ambiguity of what innovation is. So to clear things up, I'll ask each of you to give your perspective on innovation in construction and why it matters right now more than any other time. I'll start with Kyle.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks. So to me, innovation is defined in the simplest terms about creating new ways of doing. It's about doing things differently that are better than the way they were done before. Effective innovation, in my opinion, achieves one of the following, if not all of the following objectives. The first is growth. Innovation should help improve and bring forward new revenue sources. Second, it's about predicting. It's allowing you to leverage information better than you have in the past, whether that be internal data or market data. And that's really about making better decisions. And third, innovation should be about creating efficiencies, allowing you to do things quicker, better, faster, and more automated. For instance, automating your invoice and billing processes. The construction industry has seen a lot of innovation in the last few years with regards to the emergence of Contech or construction technology. However, to me, technology doesn't equal innovation. It's only part of the innovation equation. Innovation spans across the organization from strategy to procurement to supply chain to program management. And it's really about finding where it best fits within your organization and how to turn on new ways of doing. Mike, with regards to your second question on why innovation is so important right now, it's because innovation fuels change and new opportunities. Crises like COVID-19 by nature typically spur innovation thinking. If you look at your own organization, you've probably considered doing things differently. How do you manage sites? How do you work remotely? How do you procure and process transactions? COVID-19 is kind of creating that new normal, and innovation is that cornerstone to helping you adapt your business to those changing needs.
Thanks, Kyle. Over to you, Jean.
So I'm happy to see we don't disagree, Kyle. My definition of innovation will focus on technology innovation because that's what we do, right? And my simple definition of it would be it's to bring to practical use and to commercial success a novel concept, a novel idea, a novel technology, a novel system. So that, I think, fits well with construction, because if there are people that are practical and aim for commercial success, is commercial, enterprise, is construction enterprises. So I think that definition of innovation fits with the construction industry. Now, how has construction industry changed because of COVID-19, and why? I think innovation has been on the radar for the construction sector for a long time now, and more so in the last couple of years. It's every conference I've been to, every trade show, we see more talk about innovation. So it's been on the radar of construction. Now, with COVID and this crisis, innovation that might have been on a construction firm's radar, or technology adoption that might have been on the construction radar for 5 years from now, all of a sudden becomes important right now. So the motivation to adapt, adopt, or create innovation is immediate. So, and I think, this type of webinar, this type of event is appropriate and is timely for the construction industry.
Great, thanks, Jean. Tim, over to you.
Hi, everyone. So I'll give you the definitions of innovation and what sorts of things can be classed as innovation from the perspective of the CRA, because they are the administrators of the SHRED program that Mike mentioned at the start of the unconference webinar. So the sorts of things in construction, so this is what we look at in Canada, is we're looking really for stuff that's happening mostly on projects. So there can be some head office type budgeted programs, which most businesses at time to time enter into, whether it be an IT thing or maybe a new piece of kit or something like that. But in terms of what happens in construction from one year to the next, it's most often found, as Kyle and Jean have mentioned, doing projects. So, for instance, developing new construction techniques or maybe use of new materials to suit design aspirations, developing highly sustainable solutions. In the Canadian example, this would be LEED Platinum, something which is industry leading and really moving the bar in terms of building performance. Providing any testing calculations required for new construction methods and materials to ensure that they're fit for purpose and comply with the local regulations. Developing job-specific construction methods and working procedures to comply with safety and local bylaws and things of that nature. Demonstrating the safe interaction of building subsystems. Or in the case of perhaps new systems that are being imported and used for the first time in Canada or a particular province, making sure that they are comply with the local regulations and testing and what have you in that particular example. Development of bespoke off-site and modular solutions. In fact, if you think back to when we were perhaps doing a science experiment at school or university, you start off with a bit of a hypothesis. So there's any activity where you have to do a number of iterations and perhaps try out a number of options before you get to the workable solution. All of these sorts of activities can fall under the remit of SHRED qualifying activity and can be the basis of a claim.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Now I've got a question for Jean. Jean, are there funding programs specifically targeting construction industry or construction-related innovations during this crisis time?
So, Mike, as if you followed the news in Canada lately, you see that new programs pop up almost every day, right? So as of today, which is May 27th, there is no program with a title called COVID-19 Crisis Management Program for the Construction Industry. Today doesn't exist. It might exist tomorrow or next week. But there are funding programs that are available to the construction sector, and I'll name a few. Shred is one of them, and I'll let Tim speak more about that. But of the others, I'm going to name Innovation Canada. Innovation Canada is a place where you can call. I can provide a phone number later on if you want, to get guidance and to get access to all the funding programs that exist. We at NRC IRAP, to use acronyms, Industrial Research Assistance Program, we're fully open to working with construction firms to help construct and put together an innovation project and to fund said project. There is everything in our criteria qualifies construction firms with innovative ideas to develop. So we can help construction firms. There's also, Innovative Solutions Canada. That is a new program. Well, not a new program, but there's a different program where they offer challenges to industry. A lot right now, the challenges that have been published concern medical devices, medical treatments, and stuff like that to address COVID specifically. But for example, last year there were challenges in that program that concern reducing plastic waste on construction sites.
Yep.
So you have to go to their website, subscribe to their newsletter, and keep informed of what's coming up. There's NSERC, National Science and Engineering Research Council, that always has programs that link innovative firms, construction or otherwise, with researchers at universities, and that is available to you at any time. And like I said, there's Shred. So yes, there are programs available for construction firms. You need to come and access them. People like CCA, your construction association, are informed of these programs and can make the links for you as well.
Thanks, Jean. It seems to be a lot of programs out there, but there's a cost to it as well. So Kyle, question to you. With the current budget constraints that we have from a private perspective, are there opportunities right now for companies to finance their innovation efforts?
Yeah, Mike, that's a really good question. From a private sector perspective, if cash flow is tight, construction companies can follow those traditional lending methods, whether it be through banks or venture capitalists or private equity firms. But what I would say is, before you go down a path of traditional lending, what's very critical is doing that due diligence of your expected return on investment, or as I would call it, return on innovation. For instance, if you're spending X dollars to deploy a new system, what is that minimum level of return that the organization's looking for to make that project worth it? And when we talk about minimum level of return, it can really be about profitability or growth that may come, or it could be about operational savings. Now more than ever, you're also starting to see more of those non-traditional ways of funding innovation. For instance, through strategic partnerships or accelerator programs. So I always recommend for organizations to start and consider partnering with similar sized organizations to work together to solve problems and turn on innovation. It's amazing how many organizations that I see suffer from the same operational challenges. And that collaboration through partnership allows each organization to hopefully spend less time and less money in the pursuit of achieving those same objectives.
Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, that's good. Tim, question for you. During this crisis time, is the SHRED program, the Scientific Research and Experimental Development tax credit, is it worth the effort?
Well, there's a very short answer to that, which is yes. And let me explain why. Because there's two things. Firstly, it needn't be a massive administrative burden for any particular business, because there are specialist businesses out there, like my own, but we're not the only people, who can uncover the qualifying costs and articulate the qualifying activities to the CRA in a way that is as least impactful on the client organisation as has been engineered by our process, but the others will no doubt be able to claim similar things. So the reality is this work's already been done. You've done it historically. So in Canada, you can go back to up to 2 years back in time and claim for activities that happened and get a tax credit now from the CRA. And ordinarily, it's a relatively small amount of effort from the construction business's point of view, because people like me and my business, we do most of the work. So it requires a light touch, particularly for the first claim that you make. Subsequent years, you need to keep, you need to be a little bit more aware of record keeping and what have you. But we uncover all of that, and that can be done relatively quickly. Which of course, at the moment, what you end up with is a cash injection from the CRA. But, particularly if you paid out tax in the past year or two, you can get some of that back, depending on what we find. So it's definitely worth doing. And I think the second point is that the CRA have made a commitment, and we've seen evidence of it, that they are now paying out the claims faster and now without a visit. Obviously, you can't do a visit during a lockdown. So that businesses should expect to get the credit quicker and with a little bit less face time with the CRA than perhaps they have done in the recent past. That's obviously a special provision that's been put in place during the lockdown. So yes, it's well worth doing, and you can expect to get the money relatively quickly in a few month.
Okay, thanks. I know that, isn't it? Jean wants to chime in there as well, but I've just got a follow-up question to that. So it can be, could be a long and arduous process for these claims. How do you, and for a lot of smaller contractors, this seems, how am I going to manage this? Even medium-sized contractors. And I know our firm as well. We went through, assigned a person to work on it, and it took a lot of time. And it's like, we haven't got time for this. How do you ensure that us contractors, aren't burdened down by, I don't know, the administration part of it?
Yeah. So, I mean, nowadays, of course, using technology, just like the ones we're using now, Zoom and Teams, the process of understanding what a business has done over a particular financial year is really a series of conversations which we have with the business and their team who are involved in those projects. So we start off with a discovery workshop, which might have 10 or 15 people in it, and you can easily do that now with Teams. It gives us an overview, and then we home in on those projects that look promising, and then again we follow up with perhaps a half-hour interview with each of those people. Most of the rest of the process is about gathering material that the business has already produced, method statements, drawings, minutes of meetings, which are already there. And they're readily transferable nowadays into a data room. And really from that, our team, because they're all construction and shred experts, can develop the narrative and work out what the qualifying expenditure is, and therefore minimise the efforts from the client. So there isn't any, there shouldn't be anyway, there isn't any necessity for the client to do anything creative, either with words or numbers. We do all of the heavy lifting for the client, so that, and our team have become expert in understanding and drawing out of people without huge amounts of time and lots of effort on the part of the client. So,
okay, by client you mean us, contractor or subcontractor? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The people who've done the work, the people who want the claim made for. Well, they make their own claim, but we prepare it for them.
Okay.
They're our clients, not not the building owners and what have you. It's the contractor, the contractors and the architects and the engineers that we work with. They're our clients, and they're the people we know are busy. I was a contractor for a long, long time. But of course, I was also an engineer, and we employ architects and commercial people and building people so that we can draw out. And we understand all the three-letter acronyms, Mike.
Yeah.
Most of them. Okay. We don't ask any silly questions. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thanks, Tim. Jean, you were going to chime in there. What were you going to comment on?
Well, now I have two comments.
Okay.
The second comment I'm going to make is to follow up on Tim's current answer and to answer your question on burden and documentation. I want to say that all the programs that I mentioned before, including my own, work with you ahead of the project. So all the documents that you produce for us to apply to our programs can be recycled and used in support of your SHRED application. The first point I wanted to make is that SHRED is established in the tax law. It's Revenue Canada law is established. Every firm in Canada that is admissible to SHRED, that their projects are admissible to SHRED, will get the credit or the refund they are eligible for. Whereas all the programs that I mentioned before are discretionary programs. We work with limited budgets, and it may happen that you call me in October and I have to say, yes, you have an interesting project, but right now I'm out of funds. So we need to pick and choose clients that meet our criteria. Because we're discretionary, SHRED is available to all Canadian firms. Those are the points I wanted to make.
Okay. Well, I've got a further question for you, Jean. In managing the COVID restrictions that we have now, that's imposed new work conditions that have created inefficiencies for contractors, subcontractors. How do we find solutions if they are available on the market? Or is there help for us to develop the required innovations regarding COVID?
So, again, whereas there is no COVID-19 phone book, right? Right
No.
now, there's none. So, where do you find help, or where do you find your ideas? I will say, for innovation, I will say, first you look to your teams, right? Your employees, your office staff, your field staff. They are the ones that have to work with the new restrictions, and they may be the ones that have the ideas for you. And the same, your suppliers, your value chain, the people that work with you to bring your projects to fruition, to completion, they're also faced with the same challenges as you are. So your suppliers, your subcontractors are also thinking hard about how to innovate their products or their offering or their services. So you can look to them for ideas how to address COVID-19, right? And probably work together to develop those ideas. Architects and engineers, are also working on solutions to help construction adapt to the new realities. So those are the first. I would say look to your value chain for ideas on how to improve. The other sources of ideas for innovation that are applicable to construction, I would say look to the manufacturing sector. They also have challenges to address. And if you ask me, construction is a form of manufacturing. What you're building is a lot bigger, and you're not making 10,000 widgets, right, today, but you are manufacturing. So there are tools that are used in manufacturing that can be adapted and adopted to construction, including, I think Kyle or Tim hinted at offsite manufacturing, right? Could be part of the solution for you to adapt to COVID. And I'm also saying, I'll say this, some of the innovations that will be required to address COVID may be bigger than what one firm can undertake on their own. It might not make sense for you as a private, as a contractor, a small to medium-sized contractor, to undertake the large endeavors. So I would say, look to your competitors, look to form joint ventures to provide a solution that all of you can use to address innovation, to address your challenges, where, like I said, one person cannot undertake such a project on their own. And we are interested in working with for those types of innovation as well. Does that answer your question, Mike?
I think so. Yeah. Many firms, many subcontractors and contractors have never applied for R&D help or innovation. Shred credits. It's going to be difficult for them to know where to go. Let's say a few of them get together. How would they access NRC programs? What's the best way?
Okay. So you will notice that in our acronym, the word funding is nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
We are called the Industrial Research and _Assistance Program. So and I'm going to say that the client-facing staff at IRAP are not called funding agents. We have client engagement advisors. We have industrial technology advisors. So my first job is to advise. So if you're new to innovation, you would call your friendly Industrial Research Assistance Program person in your area, and I will go and sit with, I or one of my colleagues will go and sit with you and say, okay, what is your idea? What is your challenge? What is your opportunity? What is it that you have to address or to resolve this situation or to produce your innovation? And what is it that you're missing? You're missing some expertise in X-ray vision, or you're missing some expertise in robotics or something. And we will work with our network to help you build your innovation program or your innovation project to the point that at some point in time, if you need funding, then we'll have funding for you to undertake that project. So you're not alone. You're not alone if you have an innovative project. You're not alone if it's going to be your first time. We are looking for you. We're looking for you. Where am I pointing there? We're looking for you, the small to medium-sized contractor, a construction specialist that has an idea, and we will work with you to move you along the innovation experience path.
Okay, thank you, John. In that regard, Tim, over to you for a second. I know you've helped our firm, and one thing that you did was you interviewed our guys, and our guys were sitting there saying, well, we don't really do any innovative stuff, whereas you started pulling threads and pulling things out, and before long, our guys just innovate anyway. That's the way it is in construction. Subcontractors, contractors, we have to innovate constantly. And a lot of them are very innovative, new things that have never been done before. And you just started pulling on threads and strings, and pretty soon you were darning a whole sweater out of it. It was, you had a whole, the guys were getting excited. So it's a little different approach than coming to IRAP with, here, this is what I have. You're more along the lines of helping an enterprise discover what they can actually apply for. So what kind of activities might they be? Just give you gave some examples earlier. What kind of activities would
just on that John's all about the future and finding money for innovation projects. Whereas the Shred program is all about what you've done in the recent past, or can be up to 2 years before. Because, and of course, you've got a right to it, as we've mentioned before. This is about virtually every Canadian business has the right to apply for a Shred tax credit. Depends a little bit about the projects you've done and things like that, and where the work has been done. But most businesses have the right to it. So this is something that everyone should think about. But the other thing, taking your point, Mike, is that, and I'm speaking as a civil engineer, I know what we're like. we are fairly matter of fact, and people are very with a great deal of humility, really, about what they've done. Because you said, overcoming problems, innovating, solving those obstacles that you come across, delivering projects is really what engineers and building people do as a day-to-day activity. So when we have those meetings and we're trying to uncover what's happened over the past couple of years, and we ask questions about the projects that people have been involved with. And of course, this is the key to unlocking this, as you've hinted at, Mike, because engineers, construction folk like talking about projects. If you go in there and say, we're going to talk about tax credits, everyone will say, well, I'm not interested. If you start talking about research and development, most engineers will come back and say, we don't do any. We build stuff. That's the response we get time and time again. So we don't, apart from doing the little advert on behalf of the CRA and what the regulations mean right at the start of our engagement with a particular client, everything we talk about is projects. So just to have a little bit of a recap, it's looking at those aspects of the more complex and innovative and difficult and challenging projects the business has been involved with over the past year or two in some cases. And we ask businesses to sort of, with us, rank the long list of projects they may have been involved with over a particular time frame to give an understanding of where we should look. And once we've sort of got a bit of a ranking, we say, well, these are the ones which are really innovative or that you believe are the most complex and innovative that you've been involved with. We'll start asking questions about, well, tell us about how you formed this deep foundation. Yeah, how did you overcome how did you understand how the retaining wall interacted with the wailing beam and the props? And you mentioned some instrumentation there. You're obviously worrying about deflections. Those sorts of things. We start asking those sorts of questions. We're trying to understand how the systems integration was undertaken and whether it was particularly complex, whether there were some difficult issues to overcome, whether there was some, you may not have called it experimentation, but there was some hypothesis that was formulated, and then various options were looked at in some detail to come out with the best or the most optimum answer. So it's looking at those sorts of things. So just to recap once with two other things, the analysis of the proposed structures and materials and methods for understanding how the building movement and thermal issues occur. I know in your particular business, Mike, you're doing all sorts of clever things with water treatment works in the winter, which obviously is a big issue in Canada. Heritage issues is another interesting one where you may have an old building and you're trying to repurpose it or improve its thermal characteristics, for the modern standards, where you can't possibly know precisely what the answer is at the time of tender. And there's a big lump of risk in there. And you've had to work out, specifically out of a number of potential options, which one is going to work for that particular bespoke opportunity. 3D design, implementing 3D design and modelling systems, not just buying the software, but how have you actually made it work in your particular context is another good place to look. And the job-specific construction methods, working procedures, particularly if it's to do with protecting the environment, safety, complying with local restrictions, things of that nature.
And even with COVID nowadays, that could be a future big area.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Jean mentioned, that where would I look for innovation? Well, of course, I look for innovation for a living. So we look at all of our clients and we see what they're doing. And there's some of them have come up they're all innovating to a degree about how to get the sites and the job sites back working. And of course, it's all to do with social distancing and minimising the risk. There's one or two we've seen who have repurposed technology which was developed for a different hazard. So we've got a client of ours that has, this isn't one, this is a Fitbit, but it's a wearable piece of technology. They already had a piece of technology that managed vibration risk from using power tools. And everyone knows that that's time dependent and intensity dependent. Well, they've taken that technology and they've now been able to reconfigure the software so that it can measure the different distance between itself and another wearable device, and at the same time gives you it uploads to the cloud, and you've got a full-time log of not only how close people got to each other, but who it was, for how long, and when. So, of course, here's the opportunity to sort of do a tag and trace exercise if, heaven forbid, there was an outbreak on a particular site. This technology minimises the chance of that happening, but if it does happen, they know who's interacted with who. And they've done that. They've done that since Easter. Amazing.
Yeah, well, very interesting. Lots of opportunity. I've got a question for Kyle. It's a couple of questions, Kyle. You can combine them. We're pressing the reset button, and for a lot of small and medium-sized companies, they've got some strategies for innovation. Is there a bit of a roadmap for financing some of these things that you can think of? And secondly, as we get accustomed to new realities in these circumstances, what kind of innovation projects or innovations would you think would be most prominent to receive funding?
Yeah, for sure. So where do small and medium-sized construction companies start with innovation? Well, organizations first need to start with reevaluating their operation model as it pertains to COVID-19 today. What will that new normal look like? In my day-to-day, I've helped many organizations try to prioritize innovation. And if you're looking to spur innovation in your own company, I'd consider suggesting you walk through almost like 3 stages. Identify, prioritize, and experiment. When I talk about identify, I'm talking about finding those opportunities for change. Much like many of the panelists today have talked about, it's about identifying and bringing ideas forward within your organization and outside of your organization. So if you're looking at externally, you want to look at economic indicators and how they've impacted your business. You want to look at your competitors. How have they evolved amidst COVID-19? I always suggest for small and medium-sized businesses to stand on the shoulders of giants. And what I mean by that is fast follow. Look at the leaders of in your industry and consider what innovation they've turned on to be effective, and can you leverage it for your own business? The second thing is look inside. I help clients a lot of times hold pain storms, and that's really just brainstorming sessions that focus on the pains of the organization, what's happening on the job site that's causing frustration right now. It's really about bubbling up those big challenges that you have across your organization. That exercise of identifying really helps you identify and bring forward a laundry list of ideas for innovation. Once you've brought forward those ideas for innovation, the next is prioritizing them. And the reason you're doing that is you're trying to figure out, you have all these great ideas, what ideas are going to have the biggest impact on your organization? Where should you spend your time? And to do that, try to build out a scorecard. That will help you evaluate these opportunities. Building criteria such as alignment to strategy or potential revenue opportunity or potential operational benefit, that's going to allow you to quickly and consistently evaluate all these great ideas across your organization. The idea is you want to bring the best ideas forward. And lastly, it's about experimenting. Put together a dedicated team and an approach to experimenting. Experiments don't cost a lot, especially when you look at the cost of scaling a solution. It's only after that you've proved out that experiment that you should be then seeking financing to help fund that innovation at scale. With regards to your second part of your question, what am I seeing as prominent innovation projects? Right now, amidst COVID, I really see 2 areas. The first is workplace productivity and collaboration. So any innovation or any solution that will help organizations work better remotely, help them collaborate better between architectures and engineers, and just general stakeholders, that's where we're seeing a lot of innovation. A great example is sharing documentation and approvals. We're seeing a lot done right now to improve the way that we remotely make approvals within sites or within projects, as well as from sharing documentation between external stakeholders. The second and last area that I'll talk about is just with regards to construction site social distancing and heightened health and safety protocols. We're seeing a ton of innovation right now around how job sites are operationally being executed today amidst COVID-19.
Thanks, Kyle. Okay, I've got a final question for you, gentlemen. Given the crisis that we have, how will innovation transform our industry from all previous, before COVID? Yeah, we have to innovate. How do you think it'll transform the industry going forward? And if so, how, where do we go from here to finance these innovation efforts? Jean, any ideas on that?
Of course, I have an idea on that.
That's why you're there.
That's why I'm here. Yes. It's going to transform the construction industry the same way it's going to transform every other industry, I believe. I believe that the innovators in construction will thrive. The same way that the innovators in the bar industry will thrive. And those that don't innovate, well, you're not going to go to your local bar. So anymore. So innovation, I think it's transformed because it's going to be top of if it's not the first thing contractors or construction people think about, it's going to be the second thing, right? They'll need to innovate to be efficient and productive. Now, where can you go? I described the federal funding programs that is available to you to support your innovations. I would say call Google Innovation Canada. You'll get a phone number there. Call Google National Research Council Industrial Assistance Research Program. You will get an 800 number program. We will call you. And my final thought, if you want, is I read this book a long time ago called A Whack on the Side of the Head. Right? It's from 1983. It's a classic on innovative thinking and creative thinking. And one of the suggestions this Roger von Eck proposes to create and stimulate creativity is to impose constraints to your thought. So right now, we've been imposed a big constraint. COVID-19 has imposed, I don't like the word social distancing. I prefer physical distancing. It's imposed physical distancing constraints on us. Workers may not be able to work side by side on a construction site. So we'll have to find ways to facilitate more productive work. And before COVID, I believe construction, as with all the other industrial sectors, had challenges with HR, recruiting talented personnel to populate their work site. So now with COVID, you will have to find ways to make the people you have more productive, more efficient, and more maybe self-sufficient on a job site. So
right.
That would be my
Thank
final
you,
thought.
Yep, good. Tim, any final thoughts? Minute and a half.
Well, I'll give it two. Obviously, I'm agreeing with Jean. Necessity is the mother of invention, and of course, the fact we've got the social distancing or the proximity restraints. I've seen it in my own business and with our customers and clients. People have found ways to keep the white collar stuff going. So, all of my team work remotely, and we're more efficient now than we were before because it's forced everyone. Rather than have a physical meeting, we have meetings like this. The same with our clients, whether they're contractors or architects or engineers, they have found a way of keeping the thinking going, and most of them are reporting good levels of productivity.
Great.
I think the bit that's still to come, or people are working out, is how do we get the physical sites going in a safe manner. We've mentioned a bit of technology. I think what's likely to be a requirement is because there will be more room required for the blue-collar guys and girls to work and change and have their coffee breaks and food, there'll be less room for the white-collar. But a lot of the white-collar stuff can be done now by not being on site. There's going to be greater use of remote sensing and cameras and those sorts of things. That's where I think it's going to come from. And, of course, to fund it, make a shred claim because you're entitled to it in most situations. Make the shred claims. Get the money because it's historic. Get the money. Spend it on innovation now.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Productivity on site is a huge issue going forward for us. It's a great concern. Kyle, you alluded to that as well. Any final words there, Kyle?
Yeah, I would just say very quickly, as I mentioned, crises spur innovation more and innovation thinking more than ever. And the construction industry has been on an upward trajectory of improving innovation year over year for the last few years. And if you ask me, this crisis is only going to put that trajectory going at a higher level. And we're going to be doing things differently than we have in the past. And you're going to see that coming to fruition faster than we ever have. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to wrap up our session now. As we get used to new norms and we continue to improve processes in our offices and on our sites, construction sites, that translate to innovation, we hope that you'll be able to make use of these opportunities to further your innovation agendas. And I'm speaking to our members, our CCA members. So on behalf of CCA, I'd like to thank Kyle, Jean, and Tim for sharing your time and expertise. And thank you, everyone. Innovate and stay safe. Thank you.